I want us to look at this process that I have for how to ask her out online. So remember, first messages are important and your messaging style is important. But what I really want you to be thinking about is this process for how you can actually move things towards a date. So you'll notice the first step of my 5 steps for asking her out online process. Step number 1 is, does she meet my standards? Now, this might not be a question that you ask yourself at the moment. And I really want you to start getting used to thinking about dating in a way where she has to bring more than good looks to the table. You are looking for a woman who's going to really contribute to the dating process, because quite frankly, if she's not contributing, it doesn't matter how funny, how confident, how alpha, how anything you are, means diddly squat. She has to contribute. That's the bottom line. So when it comes to standards, here are a few standards I think you should have. The first is that she's contributing. She's actually writing stuff back. If she isn't writing anything back, you don't want to ask her out on a date. This is why you do not ask women out on a date on your first message. Never say, hey, I really liked your profile. How about we get a coffee sometime? Because she hasn't had time to engage with you and there hasn't been any investment from her, by asking her out right off the bat, you will accidentally communicate too low standards. So we don't want to do that. The second thing that should be a really important standard for you is that she's willing to take this thing to the next stage. So if you suggest swapping phone numbers and suddenly she stops responding, that should be a good filter for you where you're no longer pursuing her. If she responds, but she says something like, I don't like to give out my number online, or it feels a bit soon, then we can find a way to answer that objection. So if she says, it feels kind of soon, then I would respond to her and say, understood. How about we play a game of 3 questions, and at the end you can decide whether you want to chat to me more. So at least if we're getting some feedback from her that she's not happy with swapping phone numbers, at least we can sort of negotiate, or we can seek to solve that objection, rather than if we are always looking for the perfect time to ask her out, you may inadvertently end up investing a ton of time and energy in women who are just not open to meeting you in real life or having a video date. And that is actually not all your fault. It's not always a reflection of you. A lot of the time that could just be a reflection of how she is dating generally. So the first thing is, before we even think about asking her out, let's make sure she's meeting your standards. Secondly, before you ask her out, your ask out shouldn't be based around the fact that she seems attractive. She has to be attractive and. So what I want you to be asking yourself is, as you're chatting to her, I want you to be saying, okay, through how she's responding to me, what is she demonstrating to me about her wider personality? What is she showing me about herself? So, for instance, say you were talking about social isolation, and she was like, she could say something like, I'm actually, I actually quite like spending time by myself, or I'm actually, I haven't really noticed the difference because I work from home all the time anyway. So what would that suggest to us about who she is as a person? How could you then use that to comment on? Could you say, so it sounds to me like you're a secret introvert, or not so secret introvert. So try to make sure that your conversations are always angled, not around where did you go to school, what do you do, what have you been up to today. We don't want to go into factual exchange mode. Instead, your conversations with her should always be orientated around what is she showing me about herself right now? How is she showing up for me as a person? So then we're going to start to think about how we can move forwards towards the date. And this thought about moving forwards towards the date should come within 3 to 5 messages exchanged back and forth. We don't really want to talk longer than that before you start to think about how you can turn this around to a date. Because the most important thing with online dating, I think, as I said for the 50th time this webinar, is that you are effectively filtering women who are really open to seeing you. A good way that you can move on to the subject of the date is these last 3 steps. So the first question you need to ask yourself about the conversation is, what topic of conversation is coming up a lot with how I'm communicating with her? Is it being an introvert? Is it baking? Is it fitness? What topic seems to be the main theme of the conversation? Now, I want you to creatively think how you can utilize that topic to suggest a date. So say that she's been expressing that she loves her fitness. How can we then make a date suggestion out of the message, even if it's, and remember, when I say date suggestion, I'm not saying a date that you're actually going to go on. This is in fact just going to be a kind of idea for a date that you put out there. Because what we're looking for at this stage is for her to show agreement or interest in the idea of a date rather than you setting up logistics. So say she's expressed an interest in fitness. You could say, does this mean under normal circumstances, you'd be dragging me to a HIIT class for our first date? So if her theme that was coming up was, say the theme was introvert, she's an introvert, you could say, does that mean when we meet, we can start our first book club? So do you get the idea? It's like you look at the conversation, you think, what theme is jumping out of me? What have we spent most of our time talking about? And then how can I imaginatively suggest a date based around that theme? And it's not a date that has to actually happen. It's just a creative suggestion to see how she buys into the idea of a date. Once, and then what we're looking for after that stage is we're looking for her to actually say, hi, that would be really fun. I'll be suggesting you read Atlas Shrugged. I don't know why I said that book. So we're looking for her to then agree and respond to this concept of the date. Once she's responded to the concept of the date, the next thing we want to do is we can then turn that date into reality. And you can simply say, seeing as we can't do that right now, how about we blah, 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 blah instead. So it'd be like, seeing as HIIT dates are off the table, how about we start with a Zoom call instead? So do you see what I mean? You've kind of got her to agree to the idea of a date in a creative way. And because you can't move forwards, you go in and suggest what you can move forwards with. And once you start to introduce this direction and this purpose into your interactions, you're going to find that you waste way less time talking to people that aren't that open to meeting. And your conversations naturally become more flirtatious and you utilize messaging more effectively. And as I've said, think about it. This is, or could be for you, if you find messaging a bit of doesn't come so naturally, this is probably a golden opportunity for you right now to start to really practice and just get that area nailed and sorted out. I really totally believe that you can do it.